Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Have you ever noticed how sometimes financial advice feels like it's just, made for one type of person?
Yeah, yeah, I could totally get that.
Well, today we are mixing things up and looking at some financial tips that come from a slightly different perspective. So it might give us some fresh ideas, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so our source today is, well, it's interesting. It's this Spanish language text. It's called, let me get this right, 10 reglas de oro para el éxito financiero.
Okay, cool.
And that basically means 10 golden rules for financial success.
Okay.
So we're going to be diving into these rules, but we also want to point out any kind of interesting cultural differences or things that stand out compared to, the usual English language financial advice we see all the time. What do you think?
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what we find. Like, are there things that are universally applicable across cultures? And then are there things that are kind of unique?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So are you ready to jump into rule number one?
Let's do it.
All right. Rule number one is llevar un registro de tus gastos. Now, that might not sound, super exciting at first. It pretty much means keep track of your expenses, right?
Right.
But they say this is like the foundation, the very first step before you even think about budgets or anything like that.
It's interesting, right? Like, a lot of people want to jump into the budgeting and all that, but this is really emphasizing that self-awareness, right? Like, knowing where your money's going before you even start to, like, try to control it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they even say, like, it's cool if you want to do it old school, like if you like using a notebook or a spreadsheet. But obviously there's an app for that too, if you're more
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah. Whatever works for you, right? The important thing is just doing it.
Exactly. Find a system that works. Okay. Rule number two. Ready?
Hit me.
Hacer un presupuesto. So as you can probably guess, it means
Make a budget.
make a budget. Yeah. Now, I know budgeting isn't always the most fun thing to talk about.
It's not the sexiest topic.
Yeah, exactly. But there's an interesting approach here. They don't just stop at saying, make a budget.
Mhm.
They actually emphasize making sure that every dollar you're spending is connected to, like, what your goals actually are.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So it's not just about tracking your money, but really making sure that it's working for, what you care about.
Absolutely. That's where the why comes in, right? If
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
have that strong why behind your budget, it's just going to be a bunch of numbers on a page. But if you can connect it to something that really matters to you, your goals, your dreams, then it becomes a lot more meaningful.
Okay, ready for rule number three. This one really stood out to me. It's poner un límite a los gastos no presupuestados. So basically, set a limit on those non-budgeted expenses.
Right. Interesting.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, anticipating those times when something unexpected pops up.
That's really interesting, right? Because so much of personal finance advice is about planning for those expected expenses. Like, your rent, your bills, but life happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about, like, planning for the expected things, but also being ready for the stuff you don't see coming.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how they suggest people actually go about this. Like, is it setting aside a certain amount of money each month specifically for these unexpected costs?
Let's see. Yeah, they recommend putting aside a certain amount each month just for those unexpected costs, like you said.
So it's kind of like having a mini emergency fund built right into your budget.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to rule number four. This one is pretty common. We hear it a lot in English language financial advice too. Evitar gastos caros.
Avoid expensive expenses. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. But what I found interesting is how they talk about it. Like, they really focus on understanding the difference between what you actually need versus what you just want.
Yeah, classic, but always good to be reminded of that.
Right. And let's be real for a second. Like, with all the ads and all the online shopping, sometimes that line gets a little blurry. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, definitely. It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of, I want it, I need it, I gotta have it now.
Exactly. They even talk about getting creative and looking for deals, buying things used instead of new. They're turning it into a fun challenge, almost like a treasure hunt for your wallet, which I kind of like.
I like that. Reframing it as a positive thing, like a game.
Okay, ready for rule number five?
Yeah, bring it on.
It is leer libros sobre finanzas. Can you guess what that means?
Read books about finance.
You got it. And I had a feeling you'd appreciate this one.
Oh, definitely. Because knowledge really is power, especially when it comes to your money, right?
Totally. It's like they're saying, that investing in your financial education, like learning about this stuff,
Mhm.
it's just as important as, investing your actual money.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because the more you know, the more confident you feel making those financial decisions.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be like boring and dry either, right?
Yeah, there's so many great books out there now. Like, you can find ones that are actually engaging and entertaining.
Totally. Okay. So moving on to rule number 6. This one is pretty straightforward. It's reducir las facturas mensuales.
So that's reduce your monthly bills.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we can all get behind that one.
For sure. Who doesn't want to lower their bills?
Right. And they're talking about things like trying to get better deals from those service providers or just being more aware of all those subscriptions that we tend to forget about.
Oh, the subscriptions. So guilty of that.
It's so easy to sign up for something and then totally forget about it. And then, bam, there's that charge on your credit card statement.
Right. Like, where did that come from?
Exactly. So they're really emphasizing just being more conscious of those recurring expenses because they can actually free up a lot of money in the long run.
Small changes over time can make a huge difference for sure.
Okay, get ready for rule number 7 because as someone who really enjoys food, this one speaks to me. It's comer en casa, meaning eat at home. Now, look, I love going out to eat as much as the next person, but there's something about this rule that really resonated with me.
It's practical advice.
It is practical, and they actually back it up with, they cite studies showing that on average, people who cook at home tend to have healthier diets overall.
Right. It's not just about the money. It's about your health, too.
Exactly. It's like a win-win.
Yeah.
Good for your wallet and good for your well-being.
And sometimes when you frame it that way, it feels less like you're missing out by not eating out all the time and more like you're making a conscious choice for a healthier lifestyle.
Okay, ready for a big one.
Lay it on me.
Rule number 8 is saldar las deudas. So it means pay off your debts.
Ah, yes. Debt, the ever-present challenge for so many people.
Right. And they actually call this a golden rule for financial success. And I think there's a good reason for that. Because debt can feel like this weight holding you back,
Totally. It's a burden.
Exactly. Like it's limiting your options, right? So when you're in debt, you're essentially asking to borrow money from someone else. And you have to pay interest on top of that. So over time, that debt just keeps getting bigger if you're not careful.
And it can feel really overwhelming, like you're stuck in this cycle. But the good news is, you're right. We can take charge. We can start chipping away at it, making those payments, and getting ourselves out of that hole.
Okay, so rule number 9.
Yeah.
It's short, it's sweet, and it might be a little controversial. It's deja de utilizar tarjetas de crédito, which means stop using credit cards.
Whoa. Okay. I definitely have some thoughts on this one.
I bet you do. So yeah, I mean, for some people, credit cards can be really useful, but this text takes a pretty hard line against them.
And I get it. Credit cards can be dangerous. It's so easy to overspend. You swipe the card, you don't really see the money leaving your account right away, and then you get hit with the bill later.
Right. Their point is that when you're using cash or a debit card, you're a lot more aware of exactly how much you're spending. You physically see it leaving your wallet, and that can make you, think twice.
Right. It makes it more real.
Exactly. But, I do think this one really depends on the individual and their relationship with money. For some, credit cards are fine. They offer rewards. They help with tracking. But for others, they can be really tempting to overspend on.
Absolutely. It's about knowing yourself and what works for you. If you have trouble controlling your spending, then yeah, maybe it's time to ditch the credit cards. But if you're disciplined and use them responsibly, then they can be a helpful tool.
Okay. Are you ready for the last one? Rule number 10.
I'm ready.
Okay, so this is it. Gastar desorbitadamente a principios de mes. In other words, don't overspend at the beginning of the month.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, it sounds obvious, but we've all been there. You get paid and you're like, woohoo, let's go spend this money. But then, of course, those expenses, they can pile up really fast.
Yeah, you get caught up in the excitement of payday, and before you know it, your bank account is looking a little sad.
Exactly. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Like being intentional with your spending, having a plan, and making sure that your money is aligned with your goals no matter what time of the month it is.
Exactly. Payday shouldn't feel like a free-for-all. It's about making those smart choices consistently, whether it's the beginning of the month, the middle, or the end. Consistency is key.
So there you have it. Those are the 10 golden rules for financial success from our Spanish language text. What do you think so far?
I'm really intrigued. At first glance, some of these rules might seem like common sense, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course I should track my expenses, or yeah, I shouldn't overspend.
Fully.
But I think what's cool is how this text frames these ideas, and the emphasis they place on certain aspects, like that whole idea of connecting your spending to your values, that really stood out to me.
Yeah, and that emphasis on, like, being resourceful, finding those bargains, being prepared for unexpected costs,
Yeah.
it all points to a certain mindset, right?
Exactly. And it's a mindset that I think can be really empowering, especially when it comes to managing your money, because it's not about depriving yourself. It's about being smart, being creative, and making the most of what you have.
We'll be back in a moment to break down these rules even further and explore those cultural nuances we keep mentioning. Stay with us. Okay, so we went through all 10 rules, but I really want to dig into those cultural nuances we keep bringing up
Yeah,
because I
definitely.
think there's some really interesting stuff there.
Totally. And, like, one thing that really struck me was how much they emphasized cooking at home.
Yes, that was a big one, right?
It wasn't just about saving money, which we hear all the time, but they really highlighted the health aspect. Like, they even cited studies saying that people who cook at home tend to eat healthier.
Totally. And it got me thinking, maybe there's like a stronger cultural emphasis on cooking as a form of like self-care and well-being in this context.
Yeah, that's
Like
fascinating.
it's not just about being frugal, it's about taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how much our own cultural backgrounds influence our views on finances, right?
Totally. And speaking of cultural values, another thing that stood out to me was this idea of resourcefulness, like making the most of what you have.
Yes. Like that bit about buying used clothes or hunting for bargains.
Exactly. It's like they're encouraging people to be smart shoppers and find creative ways to stretch their budget.
And that's a valuable skill no matter where you live or how much money you make.
Absolutely. It's not just about spending less, it's about being resourceful and finding those little wins.
Totally. And it kind of ties into that other rule about setting limits on non-budgeted expenses, like being prepared for the unexpected.
Oh, that's a really good point.
It's like they're acknowledging that life happens and sometimes you have to spend money you weren't planning on.
Right. And instead of getting caught off guard, they're encouraging people to be proactive and have that financial cushion.
Exactly. It's about being in control even when things are unpredictable.
I love that.
Right.
So let's say someone is just starting out on their financial journey, right?
Mhm.
What do you think is the most important rule for them to focus on first?
That's a great question. I would say tracking expenses is absolutely crucial. Like that's the foundation.
It's like rule number one for a reason, right?
Exactly. Because you can't manage your money if you don't even know where it's going.
It's like trying to build a house without a foundation. It's just not going to work.
Exactly. So get that tracking system in place, whether it's an app, a spreadsheet, or even just a notebook and pen.
Totally. And once you have that baseline, then you can start setting goals and creating a budget that actually works for your life.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's say someone is a little further along in their financial journey. Maybe they've got a budget, they're saving regularly. What's a good next step for them?
Okay, so for someone who's already got the basics down, I think rule number 5 is super valuable. Read about finance.
Oh, I love that.
Right, because there's always something new to learn. And the financial world is constantly changing.
It's like anything else. The more you learn, the more confident and informed you become.
Exactly. So pick up a book, listen to a podcast, even just have conversations with people about money. You never know what insights you might gain.
Totally. Okay, so let's wrap this up with a little challenge for our listeners.
I like it. Hit them with the challenge.
What's one small action inspired by what we've talked about today that you can take this week to improve your finances?
It doesn't have to be anything huge, just a small step in the right direction.
Exactly. Like maybe you commit to cooking at home one extra night this week, or you finally sit down and create a budget.
Or even just spend 15 minutes reading up on a financial topic you've been curious about.
It all counts. Just remember, financial success is a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself, celebrate the small wins, and never stop learning.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've really covered a lot today, haven't we? Those 10 golden rules, but from that, Spanish language perspective.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how those cultural insights play into it, how different cultures might approach these things a bit differently.
Totally. And even how, like, our own personal backgrounds can shape our relationship with money, right?
Yeah.
Like, we might not even realize it.
Absolutely. It's like those unconscious biases we all have.
Exactly. So as we kind of wrap things up here, I'm just curious, what's really resonating with you from all of this? Like, what's standing out?
I think for me, It's that reminder to connect your spending with your values. It's not just about sticking to a budget. It's about making sure your money is actually supporting the things that are important to you.
I love that. It's about being intentional with every dollar.
Exactly. And it makes managing your money feel less like a chore and more like you're, actually working towards something meaningful.
Totally. So as we come to the end of our deep dive here, what's one small, actionable step that our listeners can take this week? Something inspired by what we talked about today.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, it doesn't have to be anything huge.
Yeah, even something small can make a difference.
Exactly. Maybe try tracking your expenses for a week, even if you've never done it before.
Yes. Or how about committing to cooking at home one extra night this week?
Oh, I love that one. Saves money, it's healthier, and you might even discover you enjoy cooking.
Totally. And for those who are maybe a little more advanced, maybe pick up that finance book you've been meaning to read, right?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, my friend.
Okay, so we've explored those 10 golden rules, we've uncovered some fascinating cultural insights, and we've even challenged ourselves to think differently about our own relationship with money.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And as we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with this. Financial success, it's not about being a millionaire overnight or following some rigid set of rules, right? It's about making conscious choices that align with your values and your goals.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you and creating a financial life that you're actually excited about.
And remember, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
There will be ups and downs, but the important thing is to keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep moving forward.
And never be afraid to ask for help along the way, whether it's from a financial advisor, a trusted friend, or even just, doing your own research online.
We're all in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more we share our experiences and support each other, the more empowered we'll all be to achieve our financial goals.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of personal finance.
We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit life-changing.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving for that financial freedom.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Dope Dive so you don't miss out on our future explorations. We'll catch you next time.